War broke out in the country, yet my fiancé caused a scene at the airport, trying to stop the evacuation flight from taking off, all because he was waiting for his white Moonlight, the one who, in the chaos, had run off to loot a cosmetics counter for a cheap thrill. But the rebel forces were closing in, the deafening blasts growing ever nearer, with everyone on the plane in imminent danger. I had no choice but to knock him out and drag him aboard, after returning to our home country. We left the war behind and enjoyed a period of peaceful, happy days. I truly thought he had forgotten about that woman, yet, on our very wedding day, he tied me up, got in his car, and ran me over. In my final moments, I heard his cruel, mocking laughter. "Lin Xiaoyu, it's all your fault, you killed my Cece, you got her blown to pieces by a rebel missile, she's just a young girl, what's wrong with wanting to look pretty? This is what you owe her. I'll make your death 10,000 times more miserable than hers." When I opened my eyes again, I was back at the moment he stopped me at the boarding gate. This time, I'll grant his wish and let him be with his white Moonlight forever. Chapter 2, The rebels are almost at the airport. If we don't take off now, we'll never make it out. The sounds of explosions and gunfire grew closer, mingled with the desperate cries of the panicked crowd. Inside the cabin, some prayed while others pleaded. A few frantic men rushed over to the fiancé, trying to convince him to get down, but the enraged man kicked it open with a single, brutal stomp. He glared fiercely at anyone who dared step forward. "Cece is on her way, what's the harm in waiting for her?" The bespectacled man, sprawled on the floor and clutching his chest, shouted in fury. "So we're all just supposed to die waiting for her? The evacuation window is tight. The rebels are almost here. How much longer are we supposed to wait? We have Academician Lin on this plane." As he spoke, he gestured toward the elderly man with white hair and a pale complexion. Academician Lin is a leading authority in our country's medical field and the central figure of this escort mission. He came to our country to provide aid to disaster victims. If anything were to happen to him, countless patients back home would lose their hope for survival. "What? Are your lives worth more than Shishi's?" Zhou Yichuan demanded, his face cold. "We're all compatriots, we should stand together through thick and thin." His words left everyone present seething with anger, yet unable to muster a rebuttal. A colleague, equally furious with him, turned to me and said, "Captain Lin, you need to talk some sense into your fiancé. This evacuation mission concerns every single one of our compatriots in Iraq. The entire country of Ira is about to go into lockdown. This is our only chance, Mr. Lin's health can't take another risk like this." Instantly, all eyes in the cabin turned to me. I am the captain of this flight and one of the leaders of this evacuation mission. They were all looking to me to make the right call. Zhou Yichuan whipped his head around to look at me, a familiar, sinister glint flashing in his eyes. He was afraid I would suggest abandoning Su Cece. In that instant, I even caught a fleeting glimpse of murderous intent in his gaze. I took a deep breath and made a decision completely different from my past life. Yichuan is right, we can't abandon any of our people. A wave of discontented boos erupted through the cabin. Zhou Yichuan visibly relaxed, a triumphant smile spreading across his face. "Damn it, you're insane, you're all fucking insane." The bespectacled man cursed furiously, struggling to his feet. Zhou Yichuan's expression twisted into a snarl. He knocked the man down again with a single punch, then pulled a hammer from the overhead luggage rack. He was the aircraft mechanic. Intimately familiar with every inch of the plane, he slammed the cabin wall threateningly, scowling at the group. "One more word from anyone, and I won't be held responsible for what happens." Chapter 3, A sudden, heavy silence fell over the cabin, broken only by the distant, growing roar of explosions, a stark reminder that danger was closing in. Zhou Yichuan swept his gaze across the room, a satisfied glint in his eyes as he watched everyone shrink back in fear. A pleased smile touched his lips, and his gaze softened as it settled on me. "Xiaoyu, thank you for speaking up for Cece. I always knew my fiancé was the kindest and most reasonable person in the world. Since you're being so good, I promise you this, once we get back to the country safely, we'll get married. From now on, I'll be good to you and only you." What a familiar promise. In my past life, he sweet-talked me with the same lines, fighting back the nausea. I pretended to be bashful and nodded. He pressed a gentle kiss to my forehead. I lowered my lashes, hiding the coldness in my eyes. Explosions erupted one after another outside the cabin, with thick smoke billowing in the distance. The rebels' armored vehicles were now faintly visible, yet, Zhou Yichuan remained stubbornly blocking the cabin door, his gaze fixed intently on the direction of the tarmac, as if awaiting his salvation. But I knew, even if we waited for Su Cece, we wouldn't make it back to the country. The moment he swung that hammer down, I clearly heard a faint click from the wing. In my past life, I had seen a similar case in an aircraft maintenance manual. A screw loosened by metal fatigue is enough to cause the entire plane to break apart during high-altitude flight, and now, that screw has come loose. Even if we take off now, this plane won't make it past 3,000 meters. The atmosphere in the cabin grew increasingly oppressive. Some were sobbing quietly. Others were gripping their armrests in despair. A few young men glared at Zhou Yichuan with gritted teeth, but the hammer in his hand kept them at bay. Damn it, if we wait any longer, we're all dead, a man finally snarled under his breath. Zhou Yichuan gave a cold laugh, slamming the hammer against the bulkhead. If you don't want to wait, then get the hell out. Just then, the sharp click-clack of high heels echoed from the distance. Yichuan, I'm here. Su Sisi came running up, breathless. With flushed cheeks and her long hair flying, she was laden with bulging luxury shopping bags, her lips freshly painted with Chanel lipstick, and her eye makeup was so immaculate it looked like she was headed to a gala. Zhou Yichuan's expression changed instantly. He dropped his hammer and rushed over to pull her into a tight embrace. Sisi, you're finally here. Su Sisi gave him a playful, machinoid thump. Oh my goodness, I almost missed it. Good thing I ran. She waved her spoils triumphantly, her gaze swept over the cabin, then suddenly locked onto me, a provocative smirk curling at the corner of her mouth. Zhou Yichuan followed her line of sight, his expression stiffened for a split second before softening back into gentleness. Xiaoyu, Sisi is here, we can take off now. But at that moment, the bespectacled man lost it. Damn it, what's the deal with this whole bag of designer cosmetics she's carrying? You made us all risk our lives waiting for her, just so she could steal more makeup. His words instantly drew furious glares from everyone present. Zhou Yichuan picked up the hammer from the floor and pointed it menacingly at the man with glasses. Say one more word, and I swear I'll smash your skull in right now. The cabin fell silent, broken only by the bespectacled man's heavy, indignant breaths. Su Sisi hid behind Zhou Yichuan, flashing a smug grin at the crowd and deliberately swinging the luxury shopping bag in her hand. She purposefully leaned into the man's arms and whispered as she passed me, "Thanks for waiting, Sister Lin." I said nothing, my gaze silently fixed on the figure charging toward us, gun in hand. The moment the hatch sealed shut, a rapid volley of gunfire erupted. The rebels are here. Someone shrieked. Chapter 4. A torrent of furious curses exploded from the crowd. Zhou Yichuan, are you happy now? The man with glasses shot to his feet, pointing at the rebels drawing closer outside the window. We're all going to die here because we waited for her. A mother clutching her child burst into tears. My baby is only 3, and we're going to die because she had to grab her makeup. Su Sisi's eyes instantly welled up with tears, and she shrank into Zhou Yichuan's arms. Hurt and wronged, I didn't mean any harm, I just wanted to take a few things back home to donate to the children at the orphanage. Zhou Yichuan held Su Sisi close, his heart aching for her. Exactly, he said, Sisi has such a kind heart, how dare any of you criticize her? Chaos erupted inside the cabin, some people wept in despair, clutching their heads, while others frantically pulled out their phones to send messages to their families. In the distance, the shouts of the rebels and the sporadic crack of gunfire grew steadily clearer. I looked at the group and lowered my voice. The plane is too big a target. We need to move to a nearby bunker. The man with glasses asked urgently, but the rebels are everywhere outside. How do we get out? I pointed to the maintenance hatch beneath the air stairs. This leads directly to the service tunnel. There's a route to the bunker from there. I quickly opened the access panel. Everyone, follow me. And keep quiet. The passengers filed out one by one. But Su Sisi remained rooted to the spot, eyeing the maintenance hatch with disdain. It's so filthy down there, she complained. And this is a brand new dress. Zhou Yichuan immediately tried to comfort her. Don't be scared, Sisi, I'll carry you down. I watched the pair with a cold stare, then turned and led the others into the passageway. From behind us came the weak, rasping cough of researcher Lin. Xiao Lin. I fear these old bones of mine. Don't worry, Professor Lin, I said, supporting his arm. Your research is vital to the nation. I will get you back safely. The passage was damp and dark, with the distant shouts of rebels faintly echoing. Holding our breath, we pressed on and finally reached the air raid shelter. Everyone, wait here, I said. I've already contacted the military. I lowered my voice and said, they'll be here within 2 hours. Everyone let out a long sigh of relief and began finding places to sit, but just then, a strong scent of perfume suddenly filled the enclosed space. What's that smell? The bespectacled man asked warily, looking up. Su Sisi was spraying Chanel perfume all over the place, whining in a coquettish voice. It stinks in here. What's the big deal with a little perfume? Researcher Lin suddenly started coughing violently, his face turning deathly pale in an instant. Stop, please, I'm allergic. I rushed over and snatched the perfume bottle from her, but it was already too late. Old Lin was already struggling to breathe, his lips turning blue. "You idiot," the bespectacled man roared, his fury boiling over. "If anything happens to Mr. Lin, you'll be a traitor to the nation." Chapter 5, Su Cece, feeling wronged, hid behind Zhou Ichuan. "I didn't know. Why is everyone picking on me?" Zhou Ichuan shielded her and shouted. "Cece didn't mean to. Why are you all bullying her like this?" Ignoring the crowd's anger, he shielded the woman and retreated to a corner. I had no more time to deal with them and ordered everyone to quickly find Mr. Lin some allergy medicine. But just as I had rummaged through the first aid kit, found the medicine, and was about to hand it to Mr. Lin, I suddenly heard the woman's coquettish voice in my ear. "Achoo, Ichuan, I think I'm allergic too." I whipped my head around to see Su Cece, pale as a ghost, clutching her chest and leaning weakly into Zhou Ichuan's arms, looking like she was about to faint. "What's wrong?" Panic-stricken, Zhou Ichuan held her tight and yelled at me, "Get the medicine, quick, Cece's in a bad way." Old Mr. Lin was already struggling to breathe, his fingers clawing desperately at his chest. "No," I snapped, striding quickly towards Old Lin, "this is his life-saving medicine." But Zhou Ichuan suddenly rushed over and snatched the medicine box from my hand. Caught completely off guard, I stumbled backwards from the shove and slammed into the wall. I stared at him in disbelief. "Mr. Lin is going into anaphylactic shock. You know perfectly well he's the linchpin of our entire evacuation mission." Zhou Ichuan hesitated for a moment, but still handed the medicine case to Su Cece. "That old coot is on his last legs anyway. Is his life really worth more than Cece's?" A wave of uproar instantly swept through the air raid shelter. The man with glasses was the first to charge forward. "Zhou Ichuan, Elder Lin is a pillar of the state, and you're doing this for some thieving bitch who stole cosmetics." "Shut up." Zhou Ichuan knocked the bespectacled man to the ground with a hammer, then glared menacingly at the crowd. "Anyone who comes near, I'll kill them." Su Cece leaned weakly against the wall, yet a flicker of triumph flashed in her eyes. She took the pill, shot me a smug glance, and swallowed it down with the bottled water Zhou Ichuan handed her. By now, Old Lin had collapsed on the floor, his face a ghastly shade of blue-purple, a terrifying wheezing sound rasping from his throat. The man with glasses rushed over to support him, shouting at me, "Captain Lin, do something." I clenched my fists, my nails digging deep into my palms. In my past life, it was the same. Zhou Ichuan always put Su Cece's needs above all else, even at the cost of other people's lives. My phone buzzed softly in my pocket. I pulled it out for a quick glance, and the tension in my expression eased a little. I lowered my voice and said to him, "Stay calm, help is on the way." The moment I was reborn, I immediately sent an urgent distress signal to the military. As soon as I finished speaking, a flurry of hurried footsteps and the clatter of metal echoed from outside the bunker. "It's the military," the man with glasses exclaimed, leaping to his feet. "We're saved." Several blinding beams of light pierced the darkness as heavily armed special forces swiftly secured the entrances. The lead officer removed his night vision goggles, his sharp gaze sweeping over the group. "Whereas researcher Lin? We have orders to prioritize his evacuation back to the country." Every pair of eyes in the room turned toward the corner, where Old Lin lay clinging to life. The officer's face changed abruptly. He rushed over in a few quick strides. "Mr. Lin," he barked sharply, "who did this?" Chapter 6. He quickly checked on Mr. Lin, his face dark as storm clouds. "Anaphylactic shock. Medic." The medic rushed forward, but quickly shook his head. "We're out of epinephrine. We need to get him to a hospital now." The officer snapped his head up, his gaze cutting through the crowd like a knife. "Does anyone have antihistamines?" In the dead silence, Su Cece guiltily shrank back behind Zhou Ichuan. The man with glasses pointed at her furiously. "That bitch took the medicine. She's perfectly fine, just faking it." The officer's gaze turned dangerous in an instant, and he strode towards Su Cece. Zhou Ichuan immediately stepped in front of her. "What do you think you're doing? Cece is genuinely unwell, step aside." The officer's voice was as cold as ice. "Or I'll have you charged with obstructing military operations." Zhou Ichuan tried to argue further, but two soldiers promptly pinned him to the ground. Su Cece let out a shriek as the luxury shopping bag slipped from her hand, clattering to the ground. Several lipsticks tumbled out and rolled away. The officer picked one up, a cold sneer twisting his lips. "Makeup. Is this why you delayed the evacuation?" His words landed like a stinging slap across Su Cece's face. The woman's face went deathly pale, but she persisted, her voice defensive. "These are my personal belongings. I spent a fortune on them. The bespectacled man let out a bitter laugh in his fury. Bullshit. The luxury stores in Iran are completely deserted. Who the hell were you buying from? Su Cece's eyes darted around before she suddenly pointed at me. It was Sister Lin. She asked me to get it for her. I watched her clumsy performance with a cold stare, saying nothing. The officer's sharp gaze shifted to me. Captain Lin, she's lying, I said calmly. All these luxury items were looted by her from the counter during the chaos. We almost couldn't evacuate because we were waiting for her. Lin Xiaoyu, Zhou Chuan, pinned to the ground, glared with eyes wide in fury. How could you slander Cece like that? The officer planted his foot on Zhou Chuan's back. Shut your mouth. He turned to Su Cece, his voice as cold as ice. Your selfishness nearly cost the life of our most important scientist. Do you have any idea what kind of crime that is? Su Cece trembled all over and suddenly dropped to her knees with a thud. I was wrong. I truly didn't know it would come to this. Please, I'm begging you. She wept pitifully, tears streaming down her face, yet she stole a sidelong glance at Zhou Chuan. Zhou Chuan immediately struggled to his feet. You can't treat Cece like this. She's just a naive young girl. If you want to blame someone, blame Lin Xiaoyu. She's the one who agreed to wait for Cece. The officer sneered. Is that so? He looked at me. I shook my head calmly and said, he was threatening all the passengers on the plane with a hammer. I had no choice but to comply for the moment. That's a lie. Zhou Chuan screamed hysterically. Xiaoyu, tell them it's not true. I crouched down to meet his eye level. A cold smile curling at the corner of my mouth. Zhou Chuan, you delayed the evacuation for this woman, putting old Lin's life in critical danger, and now, you want me to lie for you. That's not true. Zhou Chuan's face was deathly pale. Xiaoyu, don't you love me most? Please, help us. I let out a soft, derisive laugh and stood up, looking down at him. The moment you delayed the evacuation for this woman, it was over between us. The officer waved a hand in disgust. Take these two away. They will face court-martial upon our return. The soldiers roughly dragged Zhou Chuan and Su Cece to their feet. No, you can't do this, Su Cece shrieked, struggling frantically. Each one, do something. Zhou Chuan suddenly lunged at me like a madman. Lin Xiaoyu, you bitch, you set us up on purpose. A soldier smashed the butt of his rifle into Zhou's face. Blood instantly gushed from his nostrils. I turned and walked towards old Master Lin. Not sparing them another glance, the officer commanded, escort Elder Lin to the medical station immediately. Everyone else, evacuate as planned. The soldiers sprang into action, carefully lifting the critically wounded Elder Lin. The man with glasses approached me and said in a hushed tone, Captain Lin, thank you for what you did back there. I shook my head. It was the least I could do. In the distance, Su Cece's hysterical wails and Zhou Chuan's venomous curses echoed, only to be swiftly swallowed by the darkness of the air raid shelter. The officer approached me and gave a solemn salute. Captain Lin, thank you for your calm handling of the situation. Command has ordered you to take charge of the subsequent evacuation. I returned a crisp military salute. The mission will be accomplished. As the sound of the aircraft tore through the night sky, I took one last look at Zhou Chuan and Su Cece being escorted onto the military truck. This time, I won't give them another chance to hurt me. What awaits them now is a court-martial. Chapter 7. Upon returning home, I was awarded the title of Heroic Captain for successfully organizing the evacuation of our citizens and for my meritorious service in protecting Elder Lin. At the medal awarding ceremony, a senior military leader personally pinned the decoration on me. Under the flashbulbs, I saw the gratified smile of Mr. Lin, who was seated in his wheelchair. Xiao Lin, Mr. Lin said, holding my hand after the meeting, I owe this to you. My research on new aviation materials has achieved a breakthrough and will soon be applied to domestically produced wide-body aircraft. My heart swelled with emotion. In my past life, it was precisely because of Zhou Chuan's obstruction that this national treasure of a scientist was forever lost in the fires of war in Ira. Mr. Lin, it was the least I could do. At the press conference, a reporter suddenly asked, Captain Lin, it said your fiancé delayed the evacuation to wait for a girl. How did you handle that situation? The room fell instantly silent. I looked into the camera and said calmly, when it comes to the interests of the nation and its people, there is no room for personal sentiment. The statement quickly trended online, and my story was included in the pilot training curriculum. Meanwhile, life was not so easy for Zhou Chuan and Su Cece. In the military tribunal's interrogation room, the harsh fluorescent light cast Zhou Chuan's pallid face in a ghostly pallor. Intentionally obstructing an evacuation operation is punishable by a prison sentence of 10 years or more. The officer in the middle slid a stack of photos across the table. Surveillance footage shows it was you who threatened the flight crew with a hammer. Zhou Chuan suddenly lunged forward. His shackles clanking loudly, Lin Xiaoyu gave her consent. She could have taken off by force. Bang! The officer beside me slammed his fist on the table. Captain Lin's flight recorder shows you tampered with the fasteners on the left wing. If that plane had taken off, everyone on board would have died. I sat behind the one-way glass, watching the color drain from Zhou Ichuan's face. A sharp, piercing wail suddenly came from the next room. I only took a little bit, Su Sisi cried out. She clutched at the interrogating officer's sleeve, and a tube of Chanel lipstick tumbled from her own. It was just stuff nobody wanted. The words crackled through the interrogation room speaker, and Zhou Ichuan's pupils constricted sharply. That's not true. A broken syllable forced its way from his throat. It was Sisi who said she was going to the orphanage. The orphanage. The officer sneered and played a segment of airport surveillance footage. In the footage, Su Sisi was stuffing handfuls of department store lipsticks into her bag while trying on a diamond necklace in front of the mirror. The man's face grew even paler, yet he continued to defend her. Sisi, she's just too naive. Zhou Ichuan's voice trembled, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. Those things, they might just be things she was planning to take back and donate to the children. A hysterical shriek suddenly pierced the air from the next room. Su Sisi's voice. It was Zhou Ichuan. He orchestrated everything. He said with the chaos in Iran, it was a crime not to take advantage. A dead silence instantly fell over the interrogation room. Zhou Ichuan jerked his head up, his eyes bloodshot. What did she say? Su Sisi's voice continued to blare from the speaker. He had it all planned, said his fiancé being a captain meant she could smooth things over if anything went wrong. Bullshit. Zhou Ichuan suddenly lunged forward, his shackles crashing against the iron table with a deafening clang. Su Sisi, you bitch, it was you who said we should take advantage of the chaos. The officer pressed the mute button, his cold eyes fixed on the man's contorted face, ready to confess now. Chapter 8. I pushed open the interrogation room door. The sound of my footsteps was unnervingly loud in the silent space. Zhou Ichuan's head snapped up, the moment he saw it was me. The ferocity in his eyes instantly melted into a desperate plea. Xiaoyu, he struggled to stand, but the shackles held him fast to the chair. You're finally here, you have to tell them, it wasn't on purpose, I was just so worried about Sisi. His voice cracked with a sob, as if he truly regretted everything. I walked slowly to stand before him, looking down from my full height. This face once made my heart flutter, and later, it was the source of my deepest agony before death. Worried about her, I let out a light, derisive laugh, pulling a stack of photos from a folder and slapping them down in front of him. Are you worried she doesn't have enough luxury goods, or that she won't have time to try on lipstick? The photos scattered across the floor, each one capturing Su Sisi on a frenzied shopping spree in the airport's luxury boutiques. There was even one of her wearing a triumphant smile as she admired a necklace in the mirror. Zhou Ichuan's face instantly drained of all color, his lips trembled, and he suddenly dropped to his knees with a heavy thud, the chains on his wrists clanking loudly. Xiaoyu, I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. Sobbing uncontrollably, he kowtowed, his forehead striking the ground with a heavy thud. I was blinded. I was deceived by Su Sisi. Please, forgive me. Can we just go back to how things were? I slowly crouched down to meet his eye level. A cold sneer curling at the corner of my mouth. Go back to the past. Back to when you stopped a plane from taking off for her sake, or back to when you snatched old Lin's medicine to feed to her. His pupils contracted sharply, he froze on the spot, his face instantly turning ashen. Xiaoyu, I was wrong. Xiaoyu, his voice was hoarse, as if someone had him by the throat. I stood up, no longer looking at him, and turned to the officer beside me. The evidence is conclusive. Proceed according to military law. The officer nodded and gestured for his men to drag Zhou Ichuan away. No, Xiaoyu, you can't do this. He suddenly began to struggle wildly, tears and snot streaming down his face. I love you. It was Su Sisi who seduced me. Give me another chance. I turned and walked towards the door, his agonized howls tearing at my back. Lin Xiaoyu, you bitch. I hope you die a horrible death. I didn't stop walking. At the doorway, I merely turned my head slightly and said flatly, Zhou Ichuan, remember to be a better man in your next life. The door closed behind me, cutting off his stream of curses. At the far end of the corridor, Su Sisi was being escorted towards us by 2 female soldiers. The moment she saw me, she lunged forward, only to be held back firmly by the soldiers. Sister Lin, please, you have to help me, she sobbed, her face streaked with tears and ruined makeup. I know I was wrong. I'll return everything, just tell them to let me go. Please. I watched her performance calmly, then suddenly smiled. Su Sisi, do you have any idea how much the aerospace materials Professor Lin was researching are worth? She froze, then shook her head in confusion. Priceless, I whispered, and you nearly threw it all away for a tube of lipstick. Her face drained of all color in an instant. But don't you worry, I leaned in, my voice dropping to a murmur near her ear. The court-martial will give you all the justice you deserve. With that, I turned and walked away, her shattered scream echoing behind me. Sunlight streamed through the corridor window. I squinted and took a deep breath of the fresh air. A profound sense of relief washed over me. The grudges of 2 lifetimes were finally settled. Chapter 9. The court-martial's verdict is final. Zhou Yichuan was sentenced to 15 years, and Su Cixi to 8. Meanwhile, a new chapter began in my own life. The airline made an exceptional promotion, appointing me as the youngest ever deputy director of the flight department, in charge of safety training for international routes. At the commissioning ceremony, the CEO personally pinned the epaulets on my shoulders. Director Lin, he said, I hope you can train more pilots as outstanding as you are. After the ceremony concluded, a reporter conducting interviews stopped me and handed over a business card. Captain Lin, could I schedule an exclusive interview with you? The whole nation wants to hear the story of our heroic pilot. Just as I was about to respond, a clear, bright male voice suddenly chimed in. Reporter Liu, I'm afraid you'll have to get in line. Turning to look, I saw a young man in a flight trainee's uniform salute me with perfect military form. Aviation Academy Cadet Qingyi. Reporting to Captain Lin as ordered, his booming voice drew sidelong glances from everyone around. I raised an eyebrow at the cadet who stood half a head taller than me. Qingyi, last year's combat champion. The tips of his ears flushed red instantly, and his voice dropped an octave. You know who I am. The reporter couldn't help but chuckle. Little Junior. The whole flight school knows you have Minister Lin's pilot photo taped above your bed, okay? Qingyi's neck flushed a deep crimson in an instant, looking just like a boiled lobster. I held back a laugh as I took the transfer order from his hand. When our fingers brushed, I noticed his palm was slick with sweat. 6 a.m. tomorrow, at the training field, I said, deliberately putting on a stern face. My cadets are not allowed to be late. His eyes lit up instantly, brimming with anticipation. But just as everything was looking up, something unexpected happened. Late one night, as I was organizing flight data in the office, my phone suddenly started buzzing frantically. It was an encrypted number. Captain Lin, we have an emergency. The voice on the phone was tense. Zhou Yichuan has escaped from prison. My fingers froze, the pen tip scratching a deep line across the paper. When did this happen? 2 hours ago. He knocked out the guard and took his service weapon. There was a pause on the other end of the line. We suspect he might come looking for you, outside. The rain grew heavier, its sound drumming against the window. My own stern reflection stared back at me from the glass. Understood. I hung up and immediately dialed the number for security. Effective immediately. Increase patrols around the airline building. Install surveillance at all entry and exit points. The moment I hung up the phone, a sudden knock came at the office door. Instructor Lin. Qingyi's voice came from outside the door, carrying a rare note of urgency. Are you in there? I quickly pulled open the desk drawer, secured my service pistol at my waist, and only then spoke. Come in. The door swung open, revealing Qingyi, drenched and with a deep furrow in his brow. I just got word from the military, he said, his voice tense. Zhou Yichuan has broken out of prison. I already know. I cut him off, my eyes tracing the tight line of his jaw. What are you doing here? I was worried. His voice was low, his gaze sharp as a blade. Instructor, from now on, I won't leave you alone. I was taken aback for a moment. In my past life, when Zhou Yichuan ran me down, it was a stormy night just like this. And now, Qingyi stood before me, an immovable wall. I gave a slow nod. All right. At 3 in the morning, an alarm sounded from the surveillance room. Captain Lin, someone's broken into the underground garage. Chapter 10. Qingyi and I immediately rushed downstairs. Security had already sealed off the exits, but by the time we arrived, the garage was empty. All that remained was a pool of fresh blood and a photograph, soaked through by the rain. That was a photo of me and Zhou Yichuan, but my face had been viciously slashed with a knife. Qingyi crouched down, dipped his fingertip in the bloodstain, and said with an icy gaze, he's injured, he can't have gone far. I stared at the photo and suddenly laughed. Zhou Yichuan, did you really think this would scare me? I took out my lighter and set the photograph ablaze. The firelight reflected in my eyes, cold and resolute. In this lifetime, I won't give you another chance. The next day, the topic shot to the top of the trending charts. Escaped convict Zhou Yichuan suspected to have infiltrated the city. Military launches citywide manhunt. Then, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Lin Xiaoyu, this time, I'll personally send you to hell. I stared at the screen, a slow smile curling my lips. Good, I'll be waiting. After finishing my duty on the return flight home, I was just about to head back to my place, but Qingyi showed up downstairs. "Instructor, you really shouldn't go back to your own place tonight." Holding an umbrella, his brow furrowed with concern, he added, "Go to the flight school dormitory instead. Security is much tighter there." I shook my head. "You can't run from this forever." He suddenly grabbed my wrist with a startling strength. "Then at least let me go back with you to check." Under the streetlight, his eyes were frighteningly bright, his eyelashes still beaded with raindrops, as if possessed. I nodded. The car stopped downstairs. Qingyi was the first to get out, scanning the surroundings with vigilance. "I'll go up and check first." He drew his service pistol, his silhouette appearing particularly tall and straight in the rain. Watching the tense line of his shoulders, I suddenly felt a little dazed. "Instructor." Qingyi turned his head and reached out his hand to me. "The elevator's here." The elevator ascended slowly. In the confined space, the only sounds were our breathing. "Don't be afraid," he said suddenly, his voice as soft as a feather. "I'm here." I looked up at him and noticed the tips of his ears had turned red again. Just then, the elevator jolted violently, the lights cut out. In the instant the emergency lights flickered on, Qingyi had already shielded me behind him. His gun trained on the elevator doors. Ding! The doors slid open to reveal Zhou Yichuan standing outside, covered in blood. Zhou Yichuan stood by the elevator, drenched to the bone. Blood streamed down from his temple, his eyes bloodshot like a dying beast. He stared at me with a deathly glare, a hoarse, grating laugh tearing from his throat. "Lin Xiaoyu, you think you've won?" He suddenly raised the gun in his hand, its muzzle trembling as it pointed in my direction. "You destroyed everything I had, all because of you." Qingyi immediately shielded me, his own gun aimed squarely at Zhou Yichuan. "Drop your weapon." But Zhou Yichuan was deaf to it all, his eyes holding nothing but a twisted obsession. "I could have had everything," he shrieked hysterically. "My career, my future, my marriage, you ruined it all." I looked at him coldly. "You made that choice yourself." "Shut up," he cackled maniacally, his voice a hoarse rasp like sandpaper. "If you hadn't stuck your nose in, I never would have sunk this low." His finger tightened on the trigger, his eyes bloodshot and terrifying. "I trusted you so much, and you sent me to prison, you ruined my life." His voice suddenly rose to a near scream. "Lin Xiaoyu, I want you dead." Qingyi pressed the gun directly against his forehead. "Step back." Zhou Yichuan seemed to look right through it, his gaze fixed intently on me. "You know," he said, "in prison, I dreamt of you every single day." His eyes were wild and unnervingly clingy, like a serpent's flickering tongue. "Dreamt of the moment you were sent flying by my car. It was beautiful." My blood ran cold in an instant. He actually has memories from his past life. Chapter 11. The instant Qingyi pulled the trigger, Zhou Yichuan suddenly lunged forward. Bang! The bullet grazed his shoulder, splattering blood across the elevator's mirrored wall. Zhou Yichuan lunged forward with a vicious grin, a flash of cold steel in his hand. "Instructor, look out." Qingyi shoved me aside, only to take the dagger's blade in his own abdomen. "Qingyi." I watched helplessly as he fell, Zhou Yichuan's maniacal laughter echoing through the cramped space. "So your little sweetheart's dead this time. Happy now." My hand shook as I drew my service weapon, but Zhou Yichuan kicked it from my grasp before I could pull the trigger. He pinned my wrist under his foot, leaning down to whisper in my ear, "No rush, we have all the time in the world." Suddenly, Qingyi, who should have been unconscious, grabbed his leg with a desperate lunge. "Run!" Enraged, Zhou Yichuan drove the dagger deep into Qingyi's back. Blood gushed forth. Yet Qingyi refused to let go, even in death. I snatched up the fallen gun and aimed it squarely at Zhou Yichuan's forehead. "Goodbye, scum." At the crack of the gunshot, an expression of utter disbelief remained frozen on his face. Qingyi lay in a pool of his own blood, offering me a weak smile. "Instructor, this time, I protected you, didn't I?" I knelt on the ground, pressing my hands against his bleeding wound as tears streamed down my face. "Hang in there, the ambulance is on its way." The wail of the ambulance siren pierced the night sky as Qingyi was rushed to the hospital. I sat on the bench outside the operating room, my hands covered in his blood, my fingertips icy cold. "Captain Lin, you should go change your clothes first," the nurse urged me softly. I shook my head, my eyes fixed on the red light above the operating room door. Qingyi's final smile lingered in my mind, refusing to fade. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand. The pain so intense I could barely breathe. The surgery lasted 6 hours. When the doctor emerged, looking exhausted, I shot to my feet. My legs, numb from sitting for so long, nearly gave way beneath me. "The patient is out of immediate danger, but we're not past the risk of infection yet," the doctor said, removing his mask. "The knife wound damaged the spleen, and there was significant blood loss. The next 48 hours are critical." I let out a long, shaky breath. Only then realizing my back was soaked with cold sweat. Can I go in and see him? The doctor hesitated. Yes, but don't stay too long. In the ICU, Qingyi lay still, his face so pale it was almost translucent. The only proof he was still alive was the steady beep of the heart monitor. I gently took his hand, a faint warmth meeting my fingertips. Qingyi, you promised to be my trainee, I whispered. 6 a.m. tomorrow, at the training ground. His fingers twitched slightly. I froze. Lifting my gaze to his face, Qingye's eyelashes fluttered, and his eyes slowly opened. His gaze was unfocused for a moment before finally settling on my face. Instructor, he breathed, his voice a faint thread, yet he stubbornly forced out the two words. My eyes grew hot. Don't talk, just rest. He gave a slight shake of his head and, with great effort, raised his hand to point at his own oxygen mask. I hesitated for a moment, then gently helped him take it off. Qingyi took a deep breath. His voice weak but resolute. I'm not late, am I? My tears began to fall uncontrollably. At a time like this, and he's still worried about the training. No, I choked out, shaking my head. You did great. The corners of his mouth lifted into a faint, weak smile. So, do I get a reward? I froze. Qingye's gaze settled on my face, filled with a cautious, hopeful expectation. My heart skipped a beat. I leaned down and placed a gentle kiss on his forehead. I'll make it up to you when you're better. His eyes instantly lit up, as if filled with starlight. It's a promise. I stepped out of the hospital room and watched him lying in bed through the glass. My broken heart felt full once more. Story 2. I can't describe how I felt when I heard that remark. Ezra Xing was leaning down, burying his face in Lina Feng's neck, lifting her long hair to take a light sniff. Lina Feng is his psychiatrist. Ezra Xing has been mentioning lately that he's feeling a bit mentally disoriented and needs to see a doctor. I never expected such a perspective. Their intimate appearance was painfully glaring, and the grief of betrayal instantly consumed all my rationality. I couldn't help but want to rush in immediately and demand an explanation. Why would he do such a thing? Through 3 lifetimes of rebirth, Ezra Xing's heart has always belonged to me. I firmly believed this. Yet the reality of the 4th life struck me like a blow to the head. I was even somewhat incredulous, wondering if I had misunderstood something. Then, the Ezra Xing who loves me the most affectionate and devoted in my heart, spoke. He glanced sideways, playfully toying with Lina Feng's long hair as she sat on his lap, and scoffed lightly before speaking. Dr. Feng, tell me, do I really have something wrong with my brain? But I don't think the first 3 deaths were fake. Remembering that pain still makes my heart tremble with fear. Lina Feng covered her chest with an exaggerated display of concern, saying, what should we do then? You're not going to die again this time, are you? Ezra Xing curled his lips into a smile. How could that be? I've accompanied Mira Xiao through every lifetime, only to end up dying by her side each time. I originally wanted to see how she would save me. But now I think it must be her bad luck. I'll stay away, and that's how I'm living just fine. In this lifetime, I have you, Dr. Lina. His tone lifted slightly at the end, making Lina Feng blush as she playfully scolded. Then you found the right person. In this lifetime, Dr. Feng will cure you. At that moment, the laughter of the men and women inside the door felt muffled, as if separated by a barrier. Reaching my ears distorted, Ezra Xing's words kept replaying and amplifying in my ears. Shaking my heart into a tight knot, a wave of suffocation washing over me, I leaned against the wall, gasping for breath in great heaves. I could no longer remember how I got home that day, only recalling the moment I collapsed onto the sofa. As if all strength had drained from my body, like a spine being pulled out, I collapsed limply. This is not an exaggeration at all. What kept me restarting time and again was the obsession to save 28-year-old Ezra Xing. In the first life, he died when we were most in love. We had just gotten our marriage certificate, and he was driving me on a trip. I was admiring the ring in the car, saying I wanted to design a matching pair of earrings. Before his okay could even land, an out-of-control truck on the highway crashed into us with a bang. In that moment, time seemed to slow down. My pupils, dilated with terror, clearly reflected him lunging toward me, shielding me with half his body. In the end, I saw his eyes, unwilling to close, filled with blood, love, and pain. I screamed hoarsely, crying uncontrollably in disbelief. There's only one thought in my mind. No, Ezra Xing can't die. There's still so much we haven't done. I want to start over. I want to save him. Suddenly, it's as if another voice in my head asks me, are you sure? Sure you don't want your future to go back and do something that might fail? Over and over again, I said yes, so I gave it my all, for this lifetime. And the next, then in this life, he told me he knew everything. He just watched as I, in my wretched and humble state, begged him to stay alive. He even said that I was the one who brought bad luck, that I was the one who caused his death. By the time Ezra Shing returned, the night was already deep. I was still sitting blankly on the sofa, replaying in my mind where exactly things had gone wrong, when exactly his heart had changed. Why didn't you turn on the light? What are you sitting there spacing out for? His tone was as gentle as ever, sitting beside me and naturally reaching to wrap his arm around my waist, so normal it was as if what I had just seen was merely a dream. I reflexively dodged. The atmosphere grew somewhat tense, a hint of coldness flickered in Ezra Shing's eyes, clearly having noticed my unusual reaction, but as if weary, he didn't ask, I'm going to bed first. You should rest early too. That night I slept very poorly. Even though Ezra Shing was right beside me, my mind kept replaying the scene of his death over and over. In the first life, he died in a car accident, killed instantly, blood spreading from his body, soaking through my shirt. In our second life, we got married, but we didn't go on a honeymoon, so that car accident never happened. Then the unexpected came in the most absurd way. He came to pick me up after work, and a billboard came crashing down from above. It hit him squarely. Without missing a beat, I watched helplessly as the tall man was crushed without a trace, as if heaven had decreed his death. I refused to believe it, so we entered our third lifetime. This time, I quit my job, got married, and followed him almost everywhere, terrified that the slightest lapse in attention might lead to some unforeseen accident, and so, he safely reached his 28th year. On his birthday, the candlelight illuminated his sparkling eyes, and in the glow, he confessed to me with moistened eyes, Ran, having you is truly wonderful. My heart raced wildly, only to feel his smile growing fainter and his face becoming increasingly blurred. An overwhelming sense of unease nearly knocked me off my feet. Then Ezra Shing spat out a mouthful of blood. Perhaps too much time had passed, or perhaps my mind was too panicked to hold on to any other memories. I couldn't recall the name of his illness. Something rare, I think, and just like that, his life came to an abrupt, almost absurdly careless end. The last memory lingers in a pristine white hospital room. In the deathly silence, only the faintly glowing instruments beside my ears persistently beep, as if counting down the last remnants of his vitality. I refused to accept this. How could I possibly accept it? I met Ezra Shing in our youth. Back then, I was just a country bumpkin from the countryside, because I was somewhat pretty and had enviable dancing talent. A few girls in class began targeting me, whether intentionally or not. I endured and endured, until the day they overturned my grandmother's pancake stall. Amidst the mess on the ground, I held back tears as I helped my grandmother up. The girls, glamorous and aloof, laughed shrilly from their high perch. They called me Pancake Girl and told me to go home and flip pancakes. My grandmother was mute. She mumbled with her lips and gestured to wipe the grease stains off me. They laughed even more joyfully. That was when Ezra Shing appeared, holding a camera. He made a call and summoned the school authorities. He excelled in his studies, and his family was somewhat well off, making him quite an influential figure in our small town. It was evening, though the sky had been overcast all day. Somehow at that moment, sunlight broke through the layers of gloom and poured directly onto Ezra Shing. He extended his hand, holding a clean, neatly folded handkerchief in his palm. His first words were, "Sorry, I wanted to gather evidence first, so I didn't come to help you right away." Even now, I still remember how my heart raced that day, fierce and powerful. It carried me alone through the endless cycles of worlds where he died. By the second morning, I was still somewhat dazed. Ezra Shing got up then, changed into the clothes I had ironed, and glanced at me as I set breakfast on the table. "You're not going to the dance troupe anymore, just staying at home like this. There's nothing for you to do here anyway." His voice trailed off on the last few words, laced with confusion. My hand paused while wiping the table, and I looked up at him, but all I saw was his gaze quickly shifting away. "Have breakfast at home. I won't eat. Don't see me off, and don't come to pick me up tonight either. I'm going to see Dr. Feng." He rubbed his temples at the right moment, his tone indifferent. If it were before, I would definitely be worried about his condition, but now, I just feel a chill in my heart. He is about to turn 28 and will soon marry me by getting our marriage certificate. In previous lives at this time, I had completely lost the mood to work, spending every day in fear and anxiety, so I simply quit my job at the dance troupe and truly became a housewife. At that time, he thought I was too exhausted and said with a smile, "Then don't go, just dance for me alone from now on. With me here, what do you have to worry about?" I accompanied him to and from work, where he proudly introduced me to his colleagues. He lifted his hand as if to show off, displaying our matching rings, and now, he looks at me with wariness and coldness, telling me, "Stop staring at me all day, find something to do for yourself." My breath hitched, followed by the slam of the front door. plunging the room into an eerie silence. I sat at the table, mechanically picking at the breakfast in front of me. It was still warm, yet it tasted unusually cold when it touched my lips. How could this happen? Ever since Ezra Shing started treatment, it seems like the distance between us has gradually grown. He started to feel annoyed and reject my presence. After spending 3 lifetimes with me, now he's found true love, but saving Ezra Shing feels like a program that was preordained in my fate. Suddenly asking me to give up feels like losing the center of gravity in my life. I feel like I should rush up and confront him, ask him if all my efforts over past lifetimes were just a joke in his eyes. But then why did he keep playing along with me time and again? Yet I still act as if nothing ever happened. I watch helplessly as Ezra Shing gradually drifts away from me, grows colder. As the words between us become fewer and fewer, watching helplessly as Lena Feng grew closer to him. Even to the point where on several nights, he couldn't be bothered to pretend anymore and directly called Lena Feng from the balcony. In the darkness, even through a pane of glass, I could see the smile spreading across Ezra Shing's lips. Then one evening, like a resentful wife, I stubbornly sat at the dining table, waiting for him to return. It was almost 9 o'clock. After reheating the meal countless times, Ezra Shing finally came back. He came back, but with Lena Feng. Lena Feng nodded at me in greeting, then naturally changed her shoes and entered the living room. Don't misunderstand, Miss Xiao. I'm just here to assist Mr. Shing with his treatment. According to Mr. Shing's description, he is often troubled by past memories or ones that never existed, so I came to check the home environment, as it is actually a significant factor affecting mental health. She smiled generously and spoke professionally. Completely devoid of the coquettishness she displayed beside Ezra Shing, appearing dignified and proper, it even made me feel as if the ambiguity between her and Ezra Shing was just my imagination. But the next moment, when her gaze met Ezra Shing's, she flashed a meaningful smile, carrying their unique understanding. Throw these things away, and redesign the sofa layout over here. Her red lips moved, but by the end, I could no longer make out what she was saying. All I saw was how the house Ezra Shing and I had meticulously arranged had been completely altered beyond recognition by her. Her gaze grew smug and challenging as she lifted her chin to look at me. People must always look forward, so let's just throw away the old things. She took off a pendant from her bag and hung it at the entrance, her tone coquettish. Mr. Shing, seeing something bright and colorful before heading out will make your mood better. This is our marital home. I watched as the corner of Ezra Shing's lips curled uncontrollably, reluctantly seeing off Lena Feng. Then I spoke with trembling lips. What's wrong? He asked back in confusion. You just bring another woman back to our carefully designed marital home, casually messing up our arrangements and leaving her traces. Mira, Dr. Feng is professional. If something isn't right, it needs to be changed. Should I just stay sick if I'm ill? His tone carried a hint of helplessness. But I detected a subtle impatience. Stop overthinking it. If you don't like the current arrangement, we can always change it later to suit your preferences. A bitter taste rose in my throat. I took a deep breath and forced a smile as I spoke. Ezra Shing, are we supposed to get our marriage certificate next month? Are you still going through with it? Ezra Shing frowned. What are you making a fuss about? Just because Lena Feng came over for a visit. Mira Xiao. I think you have too much free time on your hands. If you have nothing to do, go find something to occupy yourself with. Stop staring at me and letting your imagination run wild. Now you're just saying whatever comes to mind. He wanted to say more, but the next moment, he froze in place. My tone was faint and cold. Not getting married, just 3 words, yet I struggled to say them. Ezra Shing didn't react immediately, his eyes showing confusion. What did you say? His voice trembled slightly as he spoke, sounding as if he were suppressing some kind of joy. Suddenly, I recalled what he had said in front of Lena Feng. She's always clinging to me, like bad luck hovering around. How could I not get into trouble? My tears welled up in my eyes, but I held them back, refusing to let them fall. Instead, a surge of grief and indignation rushed to the top of my head, my icy blood seeming to ignite. I smiled silently. What? Are you pleased that I said I won't get married, Ezra Shing? You wouldn't really have fallen for someone else, would you? Can't wait to get rid of me. Realizing that I might be teasing him, his expression instantly darkened, his face terrifyingly grim. Mira Xiao, it seems you're the one with mental issues. Think this is funny? No wonder I've been feeling off lately. It's because of your influence. He looked down at me with disdain, angrily threw off his coat, and went to sleep in the guest room. The living room fell silent again, but the oppressive atmosphere lingered. I tilted my head back to look at the ceiling, but the tears I'd held back for so long didn't retreat. Instead, they rushed out uncontrollably. After that day, the relationship between Ezra Shing and me became even more strained. He started openly seeking out Lena Feng without any attempt to hide it, faced with my heart-wrenching questions. He simply looked at me indifferently, his expression mocking, then just give up on me. Why don't you call off the engagement? There's more to your world than just me. He was so calm, it made me seem like the crazy one. I was left speechless. I couldn't accept it. I've invested 4 lifetimes. My sunk cost is too great, so great that I lack the courage to abandon everything I've had. I kept thinking, just wait a little longer. And then I waited until the day of the marriage registration, the night before. He didn't come home. And the next day I stood at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau for a long time. After making who knows how many calls, someone finally answered on the other end. It's Lena Feng, Miss Xiao. Ezra celebrated my birthday with me last night and had a bit too much to drink. He's still not sober yet. When I rushed over, Lena Feng opened the door for me. Inside the apartment, she was dressed lightly, leaning against the wall with an indescribable radiance and charm, following her gaze. I saw the man inside getting dressed. Today, I rarely put on makeup and had my hair tied up, but at this moment, my hair was disheveled, and I was holding our documents in my hand, looking utterly ridiculous and pathetic. In contrast, Ezra Sheng, who turned to look at me, showed nothing but slight surprise, maintaining his composure, and instead asked me, "How did you get here?" Lena Feng thoughtfully closed the door for us. But her spectator's gaze was so piercing that it threatened to shatter what little reason I had left. "What am I here for, Ezra Sheng? Are you even sober right now?" My blood boiled, and I couldn't help but throw all the documents on the ground. "If you don't want to get married, just say so. There's no need to humiliate me like this." He froze for a moment, then slowly picked them up, curling his lips into a faint smile. "I thought you already knew. I didn't expect you to still be so relentless." He straightened up, standing before me and looking down with an indifference as if I were a stranger. "Can't you tell? I want to break up with you." Reason snapped like a taut string. I widened my eyes, staring up at him in disbelief, trying to find some traces of the past in the person before me, but I failed. He lounged lazily by the bed, watching my reaction with leisurely amusement. "Ezra Sheng, what do you think death feels like?" After a long silence, I heard my own voice, hoarse and startling. "I didn't experience death, but it was close, that kind of pain. It was worse than dying. I'm exhausted, so tired, and I don't even know why I'm still holding on." Ezra Sheng visibly stiffened, his pupils trembled uncontrollably, panic flickered across his face for a moment before he lowered his gaze, awkwardly avoiding my eyes. He knew what I was talking about. After all, he also had memories of 3 lifetimes. He remained silent, and suddenly I felt a deep sorrow. It felt like a century of silence had passed. "Do you think I'm not tired?" Ezra Sheng finally spoke up, "Having died 3 times. Do you think I feel good about it?" Each time I started over, I held on to the hope that maybe this time would be different, and I walked the same path without hesitation, but falling into the same trap again and again. Do you understand how that feels? By the 3rd time, I was actually ready to give up. I really wanted to just die and be done with it. Why come back again? "Mira Xiao, I actually admire you a bit, standing at the beginning, seeing the inevitable fatal ending, and then looking back from the end. Don't you feel despair? No matter how hard you try, nothing changes." His voice choked up, his eyes as if veiled in a thin mist. "Accept it, this is reality. Our story can only end there. I died at 28, but what about you? Did the second half of your life die with me? Let yourself go." With his last words, Lena Feng opened the door. Sunlight streamed in, as if guiding him toward a new life. Without hesitation, he stepped forward toward Lena Feng. I struggled to take a step, watching as Lena Feng and he stood together, perfectly matched. "Miss Xiao, Ezra said this strawberry tart is delicious, so I specially bought an extra one for you to take home." She handed me an exquisitely packaged dessert. At first glance, my hand recoiled as if shocked by electricity. That deep-seated fear from the depths of my soul surged again, paralyzing me completely. I used to love eating strawberry tarts, and in my second life, Ezra Sheng even learned to make them by hand. I just thought his skills were poor, so I always went to the same shop to buy them. After work, he would go to the dessert shop across the street to buy them for me, and then a billboard fell from the sky, smearing strawberry jam all over the ground. That scene is something I'll never forget. From then on, I never touched strawberries again. "They taste great, you should try them again." Ezra Sheng's voice was calm and light, as if all our past had been like a breeze to him, blown away. In the 4th life, I didn't come to Ezra Sheng's 28th year. Ezra Sheng packed up all his belongings. As he dragged his suitcase out, he was as indifferent as an outsider. He even destroyed every single photo of us. Watching him expressionlessly toss away all the things that once held countless memories of us into the trash, I was overwhelmed by a suffocating sensation. As if my heart were being tightly clenched and crushed. "The house is yours, let's leave it at that." Ezra Shing left without a trace of reluctance. That strawberry tart still sat on the table, its bright red jam resembling fresh blood, expressionless. I stuffed it into my mouth. The familiar flavor flooded my senses, seemingly mixed with an indescribable metallic tang. Until the very end, I struggled to swallow it down. By the time I realized it, tears were already streaming down my face. Suddenly, the abrupt ringing of the phone startled me. I picked up, and on the other end was the lead dancer of the troupe. "Mira, our new production is missing a role. We've searched for a long time but couldn't find the right person. Do you think you could come and help out?" I paused for a moment, responding with an then added, "I can come today. Are you still rehearsing at the usual place?" After receiving an affirmative reply from the other end, I rubbed my temples and headed straight for the destination. If Ezra Shing was the most important thing in my life, then dance was the second. In my first life, encouraged by Ezra Shing, I took the art college entrance exam and successfully joined a local dance troupe after graduation. In the subsequent lives, I continued to follow the same path as before, but my dance career always came to a halt at this point. Because of Ezra Shing's death, I must set aside everything else in my life and fully confront the insurmountable mountain of life and death. Now that I think about it, since Ezra Shing doesn't need me, perhaps I should return to my own path as well. But in reality, the effect was very poor. I stepped back onto the dance practice floor, moving to the music, only to find that it was difficult to recapture that feeling again. After I missed the beat once again, the teacher looked at me, shook her head, and let out a soft sigh. "Mira, maybe you should step aside and adjust your state first." As the song ended, the members scattered to rest, while I stood there in a daze. I used to be the teacher's proudest student, young but exceptionally talented. She once praised me, saying I was the center of attention just by standing there. But now, I feel like I'm stuck in a predicament, unable to find my way out. "Teacher, how long will we be rehearsing for this performance?" 2 months from now, when I got the answer. I was momentarily stunned, because by that calculation, the premiere date would fall exactly on Ezra Shing's 28th birthday. In those past lives when I was desperately trying to save Ezra Shing from death, the dance troupe completed their premiere perfectly without me. Actually, I didn't need to be there at all. After all, in those previous lives, they never came looking for me. The thought almost made me back out. But as the music started again, watching everyone compose themselves and throw their hearts into it, the words of surrender stuck in my throat, impossible to voice. The moment I stepped out of the dance studio, I immediately booked a plane ticket. The destination was a small town in the southwest, where dance now incorporated local ethnic elements. Having been away from the troupe for so long, I could no longer keep up with the pace. My teacher was supportive. "Go and learn something new, and take a break while you're at it. It'll do you good." The wind blew my long hair as I exhaled deeply, suddenly smiling with relief. It was time to let go. I also have my own 28th year. By the time I returned from out of town, nearly a month had already passed. During that month, I wandered through the mountains and forests, working and chatting with the local grandmothers. When happy, we would dance in the evening against the sunset. The men, women, and children of their ethnic group possess a unique talent for dance. No particular technique, yet indescribably free and romantic. There's no music, just everyone humming tunes. They tap and beat on the baskets at hand. Unintelligible dialects and sunlight envelop me, ironing smooth my scarred and hollow heart. Upon returning to my hometown, my teacher came to pick me up, seeing me smile so easily. She too broke into a smile. "There's a performance by the dance troupe tonight, come and watch." I smiled and said okay, ready to go home and change clothes. But unexpectedly, just as I reached my doorstep, I looked up and saw Ezra Shing leaning against the door, and beside him, holding his arm, was Lena Feng. When she saw me, Lena Feng walked over enthusiastically, beaming with a smile. "Mira, did you go out to play?" Yet my gaze involuntarily drifted toward Ezra Shing again, but he skillfully avoided it. My heart suddenly trembled, and I forced a smile as I turned to look at Lena Feng. "Do you need something?" "Oh, it's like this. Ezra said he left something here and needed to pick it up. Coincidentally, we just got our marriage certificate today, so we thought we'd drop by to share the good news. The wedding date isn't set yet, but you absolutely must come." Lena Feng smiled brilliantly, her ring refracting blinding light in the sun. I froze for a moment, unable to pinpoint what I was feeling. After opening the door and inviting them in, Ezra Shing went to look for something, while Lena Feng sat right in front of me, talking about how wonderful Ezra Shing was. Watching the happiness radiating from her face, I just felt a tightness in my chest. They sure are moving fast. Ezra Shing must be in a real hurry to get rid of me. what happened to the pair of bracelets we bought after the college entrance exams? Ezra Shing suddenly spoke up, catching me off guard with his question. Instinctively, I tucked my hands further into my sleeves, preventing him from noticing that both bracelets were actually on my wrists. After the college entrance exams, he worked a 2-month summer job, toiling from dawn till dusk, just to put one of those bracelets on my wrist when I started school. Later, when we had more money, he began adorning my wrists with even more expensive pieces of jewelry. I put those two away. It's a somewhat well-known affordable luxury brand. It wasn't too expensive when I bought it, but now it's become a sought-after collector's item that's hard to get even with money. Lena likes it quite a bit. You can just give me mine. The smile on my face was starting to falter. When did Ezra Shing become such an undignified person? For the sake of his current girlfriend, he actually had the nerve to come ask his ex for things back without feeling awkward. I was just as undignified, foolishly treasuring these 2 bracelets like precious gems, hiding them on my wrist. While I was lost in thought, Ezra Shing had already noticed. He stepped forward, unceremoniously grabbed my forearm, and exposed my fair wrist. Lena phone gasped in surprise beside us. It was in Myra's hands all along, and she even brought 2. Ezra, maybe Mira really likes them, but I'll pass. Let her keep them. At that moment, I felt as if I had been stripped bare. Ezra Shing's slightly mocking gaze and Lena Feng's pitying yet triumphant smile cut through me like sharp knives. Mira Xiao, you still can't let go, can you? Still so in love? Ezra Shing scoffed and spoke. Grief and anger surged in my heart as I forcefully shook off Ezra Shing's hand. It was at this moment that I realized the person before me was no longer the Ezra Shing who once loved me. With a relieved smile, I unfastened the clasp on the bracelet and threw both into the trash bin. Sorry, but you're overthinking it. I just wanted to flaunt them because they're expensive. Can't I pretend to be rich? But when too many people like something, it becomes disgusting. I've never liked sharing with others. If you want it, go pick it up yourselves. That day, Ezra Shing left with Lena Feng in his arms, furious. Before leaving, he didn't forget to humiliate me one last time. Don't go dying without me. This time, don't let it be you who goes first. All my lingering feelings for him vanished. And I retorted without hesitation, there's still a month left. Say a proper goodbye to your wife, so you won't regret not leaving any last words. Watching his retreating figure, I resolutely picked up the trash bag and threw it into the large bin by the door in one swift motion. Good, now there won't be any trace of him left in the house. I glanced around, thinking I might as well rearrange the furniture in a couple of days while I'm at it. In the evening, I went to see the dance drama. My colleagues on stage saw me and smiled at me as well. When it ended, I realized I was already in tears. On my way to the backstage to present flowers, I suddenly heard someone sobbing. I looked, and it seemed to be a mother and daughter. The one crying was a little girl, her mother comforting her by her side. It's okay, Yu. We'll come back next time. Sister will definitely return. Just as I stood there at a loss, the little girl suddenly looked up and met my gaze. The next second, an extraordinary sparkle burst in her eyes as she stared at me in disbelief. Sister Mira Xiao. By the time I realized what was happening, she had already run up to me. Oh, you're Mira Xiao, right? My daughter is your little fan. She was so worried about you since you weren't in the dance troupe's recent performances. She insisted on coming backstage to check on you. Ever since this child watched your performance 3 years ago, she's been determined to learn dance, saying she wants to share the stage with you someday. Her mother's words struck my heart like a pebble, sending ripples through it. The girl shyly stole a glance at me, her round face flushed with excitement. The girl's mother enthusiastically pulled us together for a photo. Before leaving, the girl gently tugged at my sleeve and asked cautiously, Sister, is something wrong? I haven't seen you perform in a long time. Sister will keep dancing, right? Yu will always be by your sister's side. I froze for a moment, unsure why my eyes suddenly felt moist. I bent down to pat her head and nodded very solemnly. Yes, there will be a performance by your sister next month. Yu, remember to come watch it then. I watched as the little girl's eyes widened, brimming with uncontrollable joy, and smiled back at her. She skipped away, and the teacher had somehow appeared by my side without me noticing. Have you found the right state? I nodded and softly replied, Hum. Time flew by as I immersed myself in rehearsals, and before I knew it, the day of the premiere had arrived. An alarm I never set abruptly rang when I woke up in the morning. I was about to turn it off in confusion when I realized it was a schedule reminder. Only then did I snap back to reality. Today was also Ezra Shing's 28th birthday. The alarm recorded that there were 12 hours left until the last time he was diagnosed with the illness. Suddenly, I felt a bit dazed and couldn't help but wonder, would he die in this lifetime? Is it really because of me that he keeps dying over and over again? If he hadn't died, I would have blessed him if he died. Then, time didn't allow me to think so much, because the teacher's call had already come through. The final rehearsal must be flawless, we can't afford any mistakes. In what felt like the blink of an eye, the day flew by, and evening arrived. 7 o'clock was our performance time, the same time the accident happened in my previous life. My heart pounded wildly, though I wasn't sure what exactly had me so nervous. The teacher told the team to take a short break and calm their nerves before facing the stage in an hour. I stepped outside to get some fresh air. The sudden ring of my phone was sharp and piercing. I answered quickly, only to realize it was Ezra Shin calling. His voice was soft on the other end. Mira, would you be sad if I died? 1 more hour. The first 2 deaths came suddenly, both before his birthday. Only the third time, when abnormalities were detected on his actual birthday, did it give me a little time to say goodbye. I froze. Actually, I really wanted to blurt out something like, no way, aren't you bound to die anyway, whether you're with me or with Lena Feng, to mock his infidelity. But when the words reached my lips, I just let out a soft sigh. Maybe, if I die, will you start over? He asked again, perhaps separated by a screen. I couldn't discern the emotion in his voice, only that his tone was somewhat hoarse, sounding slightly distorted to my ears. This time I didn't hesitate, replying with firm conviction, no, if he dies again this time, it can only prove that all my previous efforts were in vain. Fate is predetermined and cannot be changed no matter what. I won't have the thought of restarting again. He fell silent for a moment, then spoke again in a faint voice, okay, wishing you a smooth performance. The moment I hung up the phone, a surge of inexplicable emotions welled up in my heart, but the strongest one seemed to be nothing more than a sense of pity, a kind of pity that, no matter how many cycles you go through, you can never escape fate. I walked into the backstage, where the actors had already begun applying makeup and changing costumes. I also gathered my emotions, ready to face the upcoming performance. At 7 o'clock sharp, everything started anew. I stepped onto the long unseen stage, gazed at the audience filling the seats below, took a deep breath, and slowly raised my hand. The music transitioned from fast to slow before finally stopping. When the piece ended, I hadn't made a single mistake. At the moment the stage lights illuminated my entire being. I saw the faces in the audience slowly lifting up, filled with such happiness and joy, just as I had countless times as a spectator gazing at the dancers on stage. From that moment on, the seed of a dream was truly planted in my heart. Now, it has finally blossomed and borne fruit once again. I am reborn. As I stepped off the stage, the teacher behind the curtain handed me flowers, wiping away tears. Mira, you truly live up to my expectations. To be honest, I was worried before, after such a long break from practice, would you be able to keep up? But your boyfriend came forward and assured me repeatedly that you'd be fine. Oh, by the way, why didn't he come to give you flowers for today's premiere? My mind went blank, and I instinctively asked, wait, Ezra Shin came to see you? Yeah, I didn't want to bother you at first. You said it yourself, it was quitting the group, not some temporary leave. What would be the point of calling you back? But Xiaoxing personally came to me, saying he wanted to plead for another chance for you, that you acted impulsively without thinking it through. I thought about it and realized it really would be a shame for you, figured you might be too embarrassed to come to me yourself, so I took the initiative to call you. She kept chattering on, but my mind was completely blank. So, this opportunity was secured for me by Ezra Shin, but why would he do that? The memories of 4 lifetimes were too chaotic and jumbled, flooding toward me all at once, making my head feel like it was about to explode. I seemed to have forgotten something very important, but what could it be? The phone beside me suddenly jerked me back to reality, with Lena Feng's eerily calm voice on the other end. Ezra Shin is dead. When I rushed over, Lena Feng said he wanted to see me one last time, so he held on and didn't die. I found this statement ridiculous, carrying a sense of absurdity that defied reality. Dazed, I entered his hospital room, white and pristine as if in the third heaven. He lay on the white hospital bed, his face wearing an oddly serene expression. Seeing me, he seemed to be in a good mood. This time, you didn't cry. Quite composed. Anyway, you're going to die. After dying so many times, you should be used to it by now. My voice was calm, and the moment I said it, even I found it hard to believe. Like a boulder that once weighed heavily on my heart, it crumbled away without me even noticing. He didn't close his eyes, staring fixedly into mine. Are you really just going to watch me die like this? You won't come back again, then why are you still here? He asked me with a smile. In an instant, everything around me began to blur and fade, like a dream on the verge of waking, the illusory scene twisting into distortion. Only Ezra Shin's face remained clear, his smile was faint. as if it might vanish at any moment. Mira Xiao, you shouldn't be here, you should go back. Back to your life, back to your stage, back to your 28-year-old self. I'm dead, you said you've let go. The whole world fell silent, only his voice remained, crystal clear, like a sharp sword thrust straight into my heart, piercing through the 3 lifetimes I had self-deceptively constructed. Oh, I remember now. There was no cycle at all. It was simply him, out of love, accompanying me through 2 more lifetimes, and then, also out of love, having to force me to face reality. It was me, trapped in the memory of his death, unable to move on. Extra, Lena Feng. My name is Lena Feng. I am a psychological counselor. At the beginning of the year, I met a client who was a gentle and polite noblewoman, although she didn't seem to be in great condition. It was clear she wasn't in the kind of state that required my help, just as I had thought. She led me to meet the real client, a 28-year-old woman. This is my daughter-in-law. She and my son were in a car accident while on a road trip. My son died on the spot. The noblewoman choked up slightly. She was unconscious for 2 days, and when she woke up, her mental state became like this. I turned to look at the woman sitting on the sofa. She was very beautiful, with a slender figure and graceful posture. The noblewoman mentioned she used to be a dancer. I smiled lightly and said it was evident. She sat quietly, playing with the 2 intertwined bracelets on her wrist. Her name is Mira Xiao, or you can just call her Mira. I nodded, attempting to strike up a conversation with her, but she remained silent, only turning to look at me with unfocused eyes, as if separated from us by an entire world. She always sleeps, staying awake for very little time during the day. The noblewoman sighed, her eyes already rimmed with red. Please, help us. At first, I confidently took on this task. After a few days of interaction, I found Mira Xiao to be a very gentle person. Sometimes when I spoke, she would listen quietly, but just as I was about to proceed with the treatment, I encountered a dilemma. Although Mira Xiao shows indifference to everything in the outside world, her reactions are intense when it comes to anything related to Ezra Sheng. For example, I suggested rearranging her room with brighter colors and minimizing the presence of Ezra Sheng. Even though he is already deceased, limit her exposure to his belongings, otherwise, it will only serve as repeated triggers. Ezra Sheng's mother, despite being overwhelmed with grief, knew that life must go on, and she carried on with everything as usual. However, Mira Xiao reacted extremely strongly to everything, glaring at me with intense anger as if I were an enemy. She even spoke for the first time, calling me the third party who had intruded into her and Ezra Sheng's world. I was utterly stunned. I admit I might have been a bit too hasty, so when my gaze fell on her wrists, her reaction was even more intense. She tightly covered those 2 bracelets, as if afraid I would take away the last things Ezra Sheng had left her. Ezra Sheng's mother wiped away tears beside her. For the first time, I felt utterly at a loss. I had underestimated her feelings for Ezra Sheng, so a few days later, I opted for another treatment approach, hypnosis. I asked Ezra Sheng's mother about some details of their past and learned more about Mira Xiao's history. If it weren't for that car accident, our whole family would have happily gone to watch the premiere of her new dance drama. That day was also supposed to be Ezra's birthday. He had even planned to first watch the performance together and then take us out to celebrate. He said he loved watching Mira dance the most. Life is unpredictable. Perhaps the only redemption for the living is to face the passing of the deceased. My treatment is merely a minor guidance. I want to give her some positive suggestions while her subconscious is relaxed. However, I miscalculated. My patient had fallen into a deep sleep, a state beyond my control, but she showed no signs of distress. Never mind, let her sleep for a while, I thought this way, then sat quietly by the side and waited the entire afternoon. During that time, I even considered giving up on this patient and refunding all the fees. Their bond was too deep. How can I make someone who has lost their beloved bravely accept the truth? Perhaps the deceased would have to stand before her and say, "Wake up, face reality, snap out of it." This might actually work. An absurd thought popped into my head, but I quickly suppressed it, because before me, Mira Xiao slowly opened her eyes. The first words she spoke were, "I'm back, a world without Ezra Sheng." Yet there is her 28th year, the rest of her life. Perhaps the meaning of the cycle is not to resurrect the dead, but to bring peace to the living.